Let's talk politics with our good friend Ashlee Stephenson, Republican strategist. Ashlee, hope you and your family had a great 4th of July long weekend celebrating America 250.
We sure did. Thank you, Steve. What a great patriotic weekend. Such a nice time to reflect about how fortunate we all are to be Americans.
If it was only like 15 degrees cooler, that heat dome was unbearable. Thankfully, the storm moved through and cooled things down a little bit. Hey, let's talk about this Michigan Senate race because it's now a two-person race. You have a Democratic Socialist and the more establishment candidate vying for the nomination, Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee in that race. What's your reaction?
Well, first of all, we cannot have a Democratic Socialist in the U.S. Senate. That's my first, second, and last reaction, Steve, overall. That is totally unacceptable. And if I'm a Democratic operative, goodness, I'm really hoping that Haley Stevens can pull this out, because the last thing you want to do is nominate a DSA candidate to run statewide in what is truly a purple swing state.
So why is that? Because you have Bernie Sanders in the Senate. He is supporting Abdul al-Sayed. So what's different between Bernie Sanders versus a Democratic Socialist?
Well, I guess that's a good point. Not much distinction between the two, but let's just say Bernie Sanders has been there for quite some time from the state of Vermont, which I don't think surprises anybody, Steve. But if you start to see DSA candidates winning from places like Michigan to the U.S. Senate in a purple battleground state that matters very much for the Electoral College and the presidency, the United States might be headed on a path that we might regret. And if you're a political operative who just cares about winning the day, wanting to run against a weaker candidate, which I completely understand. And, I'm sure plenty of Republicans are licking their chops at the idea of taking on a DSA candidate in Michigan. At the end of the day, for free enterprise, that certainly isn't a place that we want to be in.
And look, the other wake-up call for Democrats in Colorado, even though he won renomination much closer than people expected with Senator John Hickenlooper and, of course, Senator Michael Bennet hoping to be the Democratic gubernatorial nominee, but he loses to the state attorney general in Colorado last week. And, of course, Diana DeGette losing her primary in Colorado's 1st congressional district. The other story that we're focusing on is Maine. We talked about this last week, a new poll by Fox News that now has Susan Collins ahead by 3 percentage points. You've been around politics long enough to know that polls are immediate snapshots. We have a long way between now and November. This race could change and evolve. But the other fact in this race is that Graham Plattner at one point was up 9 points. Now he's down 3.
He's in a bad spot. And just to also remind your listeners about the complexities of Maine, there's ranked choice voting. So it's not a very simple and easy go into the ballot box, pick the candidate that you want, and then hope it's all over at the end of the day. And that, Steve, as you know, makes polling in Maine extremely difficult. I remember looking at this closely in 2020, and a lot of the public polls got it way wrong, showing Collins down when she ended up winning cleanly on Election Day without the ranked choice having to kick in. But look, I think that she's going to eat his lunch. He's an incredibly flawed candidate. You will have those on the far left saying, but, it doesn't matter. I think when you're running against somebody like Susan Collins, character really matters. And I think Mainers pay close attention. There's going to be a lot of money spent in this state, and I think he's in a very, very bad place that certainly has Democrats nervous when this was supposed to be a top pickup opportunity.
It's the one state in which Kamala Harris won. Of course, you have a Republican senator, and Susan Collins has defied gravity before. She was down 6, 7, 8 points 6 years ago and came back and won re-election. But Ashlee, if character is a factor, will that play out in Texas? Because Ken Paxton has a lot of baggage.
I have a really hard time drawing a straight line from Graham Plattner. In fact, I think it's impossible to that Texas Senate race. And I think equally important is just how poor of a candidate we're seeing James Tallarico. He's never run statewide. He's never been tested. Yes, he's going to have an unbelievable amount of money, but this is just not the type of candidate that Texans are going to elect statewide. I don't believe it. And I've talked with you about this before, Steve. I just don't think Tallarico has what it takes. And let's remember, Attorney General Paxton has been elected statewide several times in the Lone Star State. He's done things that especially the Republican base, and this is really important, are excited about. There's a reason why he ran that runoff, why he won the runoff demonstrably, and you're going to see the Republican base, which is necessary in a midterm election, turn out for Ken Paxton. And it's also why we see the polls closing and him even now up a point or two after so much Republican pearl clutching saying they were going to have to go in and save Texas. I think this looks like it's turning around, and it's turning around pretty quickly.
John Cornyn, though, so far saying he will not publicly campaign with Ken Paxton. How bitter is that division, and does that affect the Republican turnout in the Lone Star State?
Oh, no, I just think that's a Washington story, Steve. I don't think, Texans aren't going to sit back and say, well, John Cornyn didn't come and campaign for Ken Paxton in my backyard, so I'm not necessarily going to vote for the Republican. I really think that when Texans go to the polls, they're going to see such a clear and distinct choice between Attorney General Paxton and James Tallarico that at the end of the day, I do think that that's what's going to matter. And certainly not sort of this Washington insider game of he still is upset and, didn't support the ticket. I don't think that that will matter come November.
We are talking to Ashlee Stephenson, Republican strategist. Conversely, is North Carolina a lost cause for the Republicans? Every poll consistently has shown Roy Cooper ahead. One poll has him up now 8-9 percentage points, the Real Clear Politics average, against somebody who's never run statewide for office before, Michael Whatley.
So I've worked on a whole heck of a lot of campaigns that at the 4th of July, Steve, we were down. And look, there's no doubt about it. Voters start to lock in the closer we get to Labor Day. But a really important thing on North Carolina for their listeners to know is 4 out of 10 voters in that state are what are technically considered to be unaffiliated. So almost like your independent voters. Roy Cooper, he's won statewide 3 times. That matters, as I talked about in Texas. But I don't think that his record, especially from a business perspective, has been challenged. He's got some real issues on crime. And Michael Whatley has to still mature as a candidate. It's tough to go run and win statewide in a big place like North Carolina. So I think we've still got some time, not only in this race, but all of the ones that we've talked about. It's far from over. Early ballots haven't gone out yet, but soon in some states, if you can believe it or not. So we still have plenty of time in a lot of these contests.
Ashlee Stephenson, graduate of Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania, Republican strategist from Western Pennsylvania, the best part of the Commonwealth. Ashlee, thank you so much. Have a great week. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Steve. You too.